weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
A police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines then with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Telegraph's deputy comment editor, Annabel Denham. Great to see both of you. So, front pages then, let's take a look at the front pages. The Financial Times leading with the news that President Trump says America and Russia are to start talks immediately on ending the war in Ukraine. Same lead for the Mirror, which quotes Mr. Trump as saying President Putin is now ready for peace talks. The Guardian, meanwhile, says those talks are already underway, as does the front of tomorrow's Times. But the Daily Mail asks, will any peace deal they reach betray the interests of Ukraine? The Telegraph carries the Ukraine story, but leads on the case of a Nigerian woman who was reportedly granted asylum in the UK after joining a terrorist organisation. The Eye says that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is planning an early cabinet reshuffle in what the paper says is an effort to jumpstart Labour. Daily Express, meanwhile, carries a call from the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, for the PM to put the UK national interest first, instead of what she calls crazy European human rights laws. A game of no halves. The Metro laments the fact that the 2034 Football World Cup in Saudi Arabia will include a total ban on visiting fans drinking alcohol. And finally, the Star pictures the 4-year-old son of Elon Musk in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, picking his nose with the headline, "Grown Up Spotted in the White House." So, Kevin Maguire, Annabel Denham are here. Dramatic set of front pages, focus on defence, security for Europe, and obviously Ukraine. Kevin, let's go to your paper first of all, the Daily Mirror, and this idea that the peace talks between Putin and Trump, in a sense, excluding Zelensky from this initial bit, are already beginning or underway.
No, and who would have thought two authoritarian white nationalists would have so much in common there? And I think every mainstream UK newspaper has about a similar position, supporting Ukraine against Putin. But of course, the Mirror front page is quite. It's straightforward. It doesn't really explain the impact. Calls it a breakthrough, but why is it a breakthrough? Is it a breakthrough because Ukraine's been abandoned by Trump, or is about to be? First of all, he rules out NATO, then secondly, he's going to force Zelensky to cede territory that's occupied. That's not really a peace deal. That is a surrender, if that's what he was. That's what he's forcing on it. But it is. It came. The call 90 minutes came from as a bolt from the blue. And who's the winner? It's not Zelensky. It's not Ukraine. They're the losers. Europe's just cut out of it. The winner is Putin, as far as you can see it now. And Trump himself just likes the showmanship. He's going to have his 3 meetings, one in Saudi Arabia, one in Washington, one in Moscow. It reminds me of the time he went to North Korea to see Kim Jong-un. Nothing came of it, but he rather liked it. And he said bits of North Korea look good for real estate. Well, I suppose now Gaza's taken on that role. But no, I would have thought if you're Zelensky, and he released a very careful statement not wanting to criticise Trump because they're reliant on the US for supplying arms.
Well, the FT, which I don't think we've included in this section we've chosen, suggested the phone call today, they said it was 90 minutes long, between Putin and Trump, was the first at this highest level since 2022, one presumes, therefore, before the invasion of Ukraine. And since then, Putin has been a pariah. Yeah. So Trump brings him back effectively into the international fold on this. And the answer, the Daily Mail says, is will the peace deal betray Ukraine and all those people who have died fighting for their land and their future?
Well, I think first thing I'd say is that this has in many ways been deeply humiliating for Putin. You need to bear in mind that there are around 2,000 Russian casualties every day. At least that's what estimates are saying. This was supposed to be a special military operation. He was to send tanks across the border and within days have seized some Ukrainian territory. It's clearly not unfolded like that. Look at the state of the Russian economy and the Russian military as a consequence of a conflict which has now been raging for almost 3 years, the anniversary at the end of this month. And nonetheless, it does look like Zelensky is going to be the big loser here. I think it's easy, because Putin is the enemy, to think that the US and Ukraine are totally aligned in what they want to happen now and how they want this conflict to come to an end. But in fact, Zelensky wants it to end on his own terms. Trump wants it to end as quickly as possible. Of course, during the US election campaign, he said he would bring the war to a close within a day. He hasn't quite met that target, but nonetheless, if he is able to engineer negotiations that do bring peace, even if it comes at a cost to Ukraine, then I think it's something, ultimately the West is going to have to accept.
I think the Mail headline is the best, summing it up, because it does have will peace deal betray Ukraine? That's a question, and it looks like it will, because of course Zelensky could have probably done the deal himself. If he does it right, let's stop. You can have all that territory. We won't join NATO. Then Putin, you're quite right, at some huge cost to his own country in terms of people and economic damage, but. Talking to Putin is fine. Like Macron did, Olaf Scholz did. That's not the problem. The problem is always, what do you say to him? And if Trump always likes to think he's a very transactional, a great negotiator, the art of the deal, so on, well, he's already given away NATO membership for Ukraine, and he's now given away Ukrainian territory, which actually really, in one sense, isn't his to give away, but it can never be retaken without US support, because Ukraine isn't big enough, isn't well armed enough, doesn't have the weapons or the manpower to do it.
But the difficulty, of course, that Trump is facing is that this conflict has cost the American taxpayer around $180 billion. Now, look at what Elon Musk is trying to do with Doge by slashing federal spending by $2 trillion every year. I think there will be a lot of pressure from voters in America on Donald Trump to pull back from the spending and the investment that they've put into supporting Ukraine.
Let's just look at a few more papers while you're mulling that thought, which was coming out of your mouth. Apologies for stopping you. The Times, I'm just going to go to now. Trump and Putin start Ukraine peace talks. Zelensky has a meaningful call with the US president. Many of the papers pointing out that Zelensky was called after this phone conversation between Putin and Trump. The Telegraph as well, on their front page, Trump and Putin start talks to end the war in Ukraine, as well on the side column there, still picturing the conversations from the day before. But The Guardian does talk about, what Pete Hegseth said in Europe. Kyiv told it must cede territory, going back to 2014, which was Crimea, as we know, and part of the Donbass, and rejecting NATO membership, which, to be fair, Biden had done already. But the other messages that we heard from Pete Hegseth was, Europe is no longer our priority. We are concerned about the South China Sea and China, which effectively means in this 80th anniversary year for the end of the Second World War, it feels like we're back to 1940, doesn't it? Yeah, well,
when Biden was in the White House, it felt, in fact, the US was an ally. Now it doesn't feel like an ally. At times with Trump, it feels like a hostile power. He's a leader of a hostile power who talks more warmly about Putin than he does the leaders of allies and neighbours, whether you're Canada or Mexico or many European countries, although he seems to have a crush on Keir Starmer at the moment. How long that'll last, we'll see. It's amazing how you can prostitute out the royal family to keep him on side and use flattery. And that seems to be doing it to some extent. But no, it's big question time for Europe. And I think the UK, I think we look a little isolated being outside the European Union here. But yeah, Europe can't rely on the US anymore. You can see they spend so much on defence because they look eastwards across to Europe, and they look also westwards towards the Pacific and China. And in the end of the Obama period, they were beginning to pivot more to the Pacific away from Europe. And I think that's just going to take a much sharper turn now.
Well, I mean, but my view is that European nations have been quite lazy and quite complacent and assumed that they will always have the support and backing of America. Yet it's been quite clear that there has been this Indo-Pacific tilt underway in terms of US foreign policy, that they're very concerned about the solidifying of the axis of authoritarianism of China and Russia and North Korea, and they've wanted to identify ways to try and combat that, but sort of putting their focus in the Pacific. And I think it was this time last year that Grant Shapps stood up and said, the peace dividend is over. We need to commit to spending more than 2.5% of GDP on defence. And we've made no progress at all.
Well, the Strategic Defence Review, as we know, is underway. Also, Penny Mordaunt talking today about how NATO members have been given a document that they should spend 3% by, I think it was 2035. So 3% still is not the 5% that Donald Trump was talking about. But let's go to the Daily Star, shall we? Grown-ups spotted in the White House. Big arrow at Lil X, Elon Musk's child. I know you both like this one. But anyway, nose-picking 4-year-old finally adds a semblance of calm to the US government. It's been an extraordinary couple of weeks since the 20th of January, has it not? It
has. And, of course, Trump is making the news everywhere. Well, that is it. It's the weather. And it's very unpredictable. It's often hostile. It's rarely pleasant, I would argue. But it's incredible. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris had won? It wouldn't be like this at all. It would be rather boring and dull and predictable. Well, I quite like boring and dull and predictable in life. As a journalist, I appreciate Trump and the stories. But what they say, bad news is good news is no news.
I'm just going to say, possibly my favourite line on the whole of the front page is the son of car salesman, Elon Musk. How disparaging of the world's richest man.
The suggestion was that he tried to pull away so that he wasn't in the shot with Lil X, but who knows if that's true. Anyway, in terms of calm, we'll come back with the prospect of a reshuffle here in the UK government, and also why was a Palestinian family allowed to stay in the UK as part of the Ukrainian refugee scheme, a story that's been rumbling all week. We'll discuss that again. Here we go.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre. Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent. A show of military might and menace. Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day. It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov. The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past. There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we are to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world? Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West. Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News? Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, who was first on display. Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
We're going to do this 100 times every day for the next 3 months.
Why have we agreed to this?
Raises many questions about many things.
Actually seeing people impacted, she was so upset.
It was powerful. They kind of couldn't believe they were being berated here.
Very much on my terms, I think was the subtext. News happens fast around Donald Trump.
It was a kind of wow moment.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
It's Trump world, and we just live in it.
So, where next?
Follow Trump 100 wherever you get your podcasts.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Lots to pack in this evening. Kevin Maguire and Annabel Denham are both here. So if you don't mind, sort of a little bit quickly, because we've got a lot to get through. Annabel, the Eye, prospect of a cabinet reshuffle.
Yes, well, in 6 months we've had many milestones and landmark addresses and resets, and it still is not going very well for Keir Starmer. His approval rating has plummeted. Reform is now topping some polls and looks like it could be a real threat to Labour. And now there is a suggestion that there will be Starmer's first reshuffle in an attempt to jumpstart the party, and it's the Education Secretary, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy and the Attorney General Lord Hermer, who has come under a lot of scrutiny in the last few weeks over previously representing Gerry Adams and his involvement in the Chagos Islands deal, who look to be on the chopping block.
Yeah, is this all May elections focused? Is that what the issue is here?
It might. I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, these stories keep coming along, and some of them are going to be right, and some of them are going to be wrong. Is the truth about it? I'm not sure you're going to really change your fortunes by shifting a few people around in cabinet table seats. And anyway, he's already lost his transport secretary, and he's anti-corruption. Alleged with the anti-corruption minister and neighbour Tulip Sadiq in Camden, and he's lost his health minister just this week. So, how much is he going to have an imminent reshuffle? I'd be very surprised if this was imminent.
They're reshuffling themselves. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I'd say the two most sort of controversial, divisive figures in the cabinet are Ed Miliband and Rachel Reeves, neither of whom are on this list. Although Bridget Phillipson has made herself quite unpopular in certain quarters
and popular in others.
Reforms.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Daily Express now, shall we? Which was a story that was in today's newspapers, which is a Palestinian family who managed to stay here as part of the Ukrainian refugee deal.
Have they arrived? Have they actually arrived? Because they applied for it. Have they actually arrived?
Well, they've more than applied because they've had their case heard.
Yeah, but are they actually here? Sorry, because I read it in the Telegraph today. The scheme's closed now, but she had. I think the Express have been, how can I put it, very kind to Kemi Badenoch, because I think right across the political spectrum today, left through the centre to the right, they thought she had a nightmare.
Yeah, because she asked this question, and in the first answers, Keir Starmer agreed with her, and then she asked it again, then asked it again.
Yeah. I mean, even I, very, very pro migration, think if you've got a Ukrainian scheme, it's not intended for people in Palestine. I'd be delighted to see a scheme for Palestinians who have relatives here, but there isn't one. So I think the judge, was overreach, and she couldn't think on her feet. It was really, it's quite painful to watch.
She needs a plan B in case she gets a positive answer from the Prime Minister.
But I think there was a lot that she could have brought up today. She could have brought up defence spending, or she could have, brought up the economy. Of course, we're going to have some GDP data tomorrow. The effects of the budget still being felt. A lot of pressure on Rachel Reeves, and yet she stuck to this quite, narrow line of questioning
about reform.
Whether he was going to appeal this ruling in the immigration tribunal.
It's our anti-reform push, isn't it? And that's but it didn't work today.
Yeah. Let's see if we can squeeze in the Times, which is the King and New Towns. If anybody can dig out their stack with that.
Yeah. More than 100 areas have applied to be a dozen new towns, 10,000 each, and. We had those extraordinary pictures of Charlie being really chummy with Starmer and Angela Rayner earlier the week in Cornwall. And it says, Labour has cited Georgian townhouses and Edwardian mansion blocks as key inspirations. I mean, talk about tickling his chin and getting him on side. If he's going to fall for that, I mean, I can promise you these new towns are not going to be full of mock Georgian townhouses and Edwardian mansion blocks.
Well, I mean, you know, a lot of people speak very favourably of Poundbury and...
it's horrible.
Well, I've never been there, but, you know, pastiche is popular with some people.
It's disturbing.
And if that's the sort of thing.
If you go live there, I mean, the list of rules, you're not allowed hanging baskets. I mean, if you want a hanging basket, you can have a hanging basket, but no, he says
But,
no.
I mean, look, the point is, if they're able to build new homes and actually get shovels in the ground, that's absolutely tremendous. We have a chronic housing shortage in this country, which is massively driving up the cost of living, but I'll believe it when I see it.
20 seconds on a no-booze World Cup.
I know, this is the Saudi ambassador. What I really like, he says, rather like our weather, it is a dry country. I like a drink when I go to the football, but if you can't have one, it doesn't really change it that much, in all honesty.
OK, that's all we've got time for. I'm sure you want to come
Happy
back
to let
next
him
time.
have the final word on football.
There's a bigger issue.
fine.
Why is it in Saudi Arabia? That's the big issue, the hand-chopping,
Kevin,
head-chopping
Annabel,
regime.
thank you.
Sorry.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who